deliberately wanted to work with and or invest or prop up some of these individuals who have been some of the most disruptive forces in both US and European politics over the past 15 years because he wanted to undermine democracy. He wanted to recreate something. What was his mission statement, or what we Hey, everybody. Thanks for joining us. Starting a little bit later today, I'm a bit under the weather. So if you hear some sniffles, all is well. And if I'm a bit slower than usual, have no fear because Ryan will pick up the slack. Ryan Broderick is a writer. He is the author of a fantastic daily newsletter called Garbage Day. I'm going to link to it. Also, the host of the Panic World podcast. And Ryan, like a masochist, spent the entire weekend going over what we know so far, which was released in the Epstein Files, and all the connections between Jeffrey Epstein and just some people like Steve Bannon, and some people like I don't know, Peter Thiel, and some individuals on the far right. Oh, and I don't know, one of the founders of 4chan. And what we have discovered, and I think what Ryan breaks down really well in his piece, here's how Epstein broke the internet, is very deliberately, Ryan. Epstein had like a mission statement. He had a plan where he deliberately wanted to work with and or invest or prop up some of these individuals who have been some of the most disruptive forces in both US and European politics over the past 15 years because he wanted to undermine democracy. He wanted to recreate something. What was his mission statement, or what we think is the closest that he articulated his mission statement based on the evidence?
Yeah, so there's two emails that I would point to. Also, hi, thanks for having me on. There's two emails I would point to as being useful to answer this question. So the first one is one he wrote to Peter Thiel in 2016, in the summer of Brexit, and he writes, "Brexit, just the beginning." And then Peter Thiel asks him, "Of what?" And then he, in his very bizarre writing style that is just awful to deal with, he writes, "Return to tribalism, counter to globalism, amazing new alliances. You and I both agreed zero interest rates were too high. And as I said in your office, finding things on their way to collapse was much easier than finding the next bargain." And then the other piece of this that I think is very important, sort of for understanding how how his thinking changes over time, is an email to Steve Bannon, where he basically outlines this idea of crushing the Me Too movement by using cryptocurrency, creating far-right parties across Europe and the world, creating a coalition of those parties, funding them via cryptocurrency, and crushing what they called Time's Up. They were using the old name Time's Up throughout most of their emails. And I think those two things are effectively the same idea, that the internet had become too unstable for them to continue operating in the shadows, and that they needed to effectively overthrow democracy to make it so that they could keep their sex trafficking ring and influence operations going without any, public scrutiny.
There's a lot to unpack there, but
Yeah.
I do want to focus on something because I've noticed a recurring trend, and this is just I've shared the story before. Several years ago, I think by accident, I was invited to the Aspen Ideas Festival. And for those who don't know, Aspen Ideas is it's an interesting place, but it's on Billionaires Mountain. Okay. So you go there, and it's like a who's who. And most of the ideas that are actually exchanged aren't really interesting ideas. Some of us who went there, the few people of color actually, brought our A game and tried. But it seems like just a lot of people hobnobbing. And I remember just a random, I promise this will connect. Barry Weiss made her inaugural debut
Sure.
at Aspen, and she made her debut by interviewing Jordan Peterson. And so someone got me a ticket, and I saw it, and I just looked at the crowd, and they ate up this nonsense. It was just verbal diarrhea. It was nonsense. I was not impressed, but it was basically a return to like 1950s white male patriarchy, essentially, right? All right. And I remember I couldn't resist. Barry was a colleague of mine at the time in the New York Times. So you always have to like be, oh, hi, hey.
Mhm.
So there was an interesting group. It was Barry Weiss, an old professor of mine and Jordan Peterson. They're like, "Waj, join us." So I'm like, can't resist, must sit and just observe. And I observed Jordan first and foremost. He didn't look well. So I remember I WhatsApped a few of my
Of
friends.
course.
I said, "Listen, this is the guy. Just wait for it. They're eating him up. I guarantee you, this guy's gonna blow up." And furthermore, and this is not being a hater, Ryan. I'm like, this guy doesn't look well, like spiritually, emotionally. All right, that was one. Then a billionaire comes, joins us. And we were like, all right, whatever. And he goes, yeah, I fund Jordan Peterson. I'm like, what do you mean? He goes, I support him and his mission. And I think what he's saying is really important. I'm like, interesting. About what? His critiques of the Me Too movement.
Of course.
And it always stuck with me, Ryan, that I think something that people are missing is people say, okay, COVID broke a lot of people. Yes, it did. But at the same time, with COVID, I think what people are underestimating is what two things that really broke the elite: Me Too and BLM.
Yeah.
And can you just expand on that and what you've seen
Yeah,
on the
so
Epstein Files?
I wasn't super looking for BLM stuff. I can say
Well, that's just
confidently.
my take on it,
Yeah,
but
yeah.
Me Too specifically.
Yeah, because I can confidently say that, like, Epstein is a massive, massive racist, like jaw-droppingly racist. But he and Bannon in particular were very focused on Time's Up. They were very worried about it. In fact, they were kind of operating in similar circles. They had overlapping networks, but they were not officially introduced until the day after the New York Times wrote the Harvey Weinstein expose.
Wow.
And I think that timing is extremely important. They also seem to be very interested in blocking any further investigations from happening. They're talking about it constantly as this project of theirs, and it seems like they thought the best way to do that was to completely destabilize the EU, but that was sort of more of a funding, like this is hard, right? Because we're only seeing bits and pieces of this guy's world. But it seems like blocking Me Too was the big thing they wanted to accomplish. And they thought that the easiest way to do that was to replace the dollar with Bitcoin. And they thought the easiest way to do that was to smash the EU. So it's like they've created this weird system where they're like, okay, if we can completely deregulate the world, then we can just fund money to whoever wants to block Me Too investigations.
And the reason for I think that, the core of so much of this greed, misogyny, racism, and we'll talk about Epstein's racism, which is just exquisite,
Yeah.
in its openness, is that what Me Too did briefly is it brought a spotlight. It had moments of accountability, and I think you saw the powerful people, now that we even know more, were like, "Oh, whoa, whoa, what happens if they come after us?"
Yes, exactly.
They'll mess up a good thing, and we don't want to get canceled, and we want to continue raping. And is it really rape? I mean, they're barely legal according to Megyn Kelly. And so let us actually use this to embark upon our supervillain plot to destroy the world. And we've often talked about, right? And I'm going to have Gil Duran and others, but we've talked about how crypto is so central to the Broligarchy's plan to literally destroy everything and rebuild something just for themselves. Can you talk to us about the crypto alliance? And let's talk about Peter Thiel.
Yeah, so reading Epstein's thoughts on Bitcoin, what a sentence, evolve over time was very fascinating. He was not particularly confident in Bitcoin. In fact, he has this whole thing where he describes it as being inherently trans, as like a transphobic way to describe how it's a property masquerading as a currency and vice versa. And he would tell people like, don't invest in Bitcoin. At the same time, though, he was heavily involved in the MIT Media Lab, which in the early 2000s eventually takes over a lot of the core programming for Bitcoin software. And he slowly starts to come around to the idea that Bitcoin can be useful. He's also in the early 2010s, late 2000s, very interested in in-game purchases and
Oh, oh,
microtransactions. So
so
he
online gaming worlds, like,
Yeah, yeah. So he makes like a World of Warcraft account. He connects with Brock Pierce, who owns a company that eventually gets taken by Steve Bannon, which was a gold farming operation in Warcraft, where they were basically selling Warcraft gold for real money. And so he's experimenting with ways, in my opinion, to move funds around the world without being detected. I also think Warcraft would be a great place to have communications that weren't being monitored. So he's experimenting with all these things. He slowly comes around to cryptocurrency. as his major focus. And then him and Bannon are basically dreaming up ways to deregulate crypto, particularly in Europe. And he's also, I think, important to note, he's very focused on. I get the quote for you because it's another one of those statements where you're like, wow, he's just saying it.
I
Um,
think I know what you're talking about. I hold on, let me see if I have it.
Yeah, I got it right here. So, in 2013, he wrote that he wanted to leapfrog the global community by reinventing the financial system of the 21st century to help Russia. Now, there's been all kinds of accusations about, like, what kind of espionage he was dealing with. From what I've read, a bit of everyone was sort of in his pocket. But he was very interested in manipulating the global financial market. And he was going around and pitching this stuff to other billionaires and oligarchs, being like, wow, I just got back from Silicon Valley. You got to hear what, Andreessen Horowitz is doing. You got to hear what Peter Thiel is up to. Like he's pitching these ideas to the old money world as an investment opportunity.
And I think this is important, folks, because we often saw, okay, Musk, Andreessen Horowitz, Peter Thiel, Sachs, right? Like the PayPal broligarchy. These are the individuals who created this disruptive model, right? To use crypto to essentially deregulate and essentially destroy the monetary system so they can get a leg up and then create their techno fascist utopias in Greenland. Not making this up. Go check out some left hooks. But it seems that the whisper, the Iago, from what we know, was Epstein 15
Yes.
years ago.
It's funny, in 2010, he's asked if he knows, uh, Roy Cohn, a Silicon Valley investor, and he says, "Silicon Valley is another world to me. I don't know it." And then, almost immediately after, he starts networking. He tries out Elon Musk, and tries to see what he can do there. He doesn't he seems to not like Musk. He seems to find him annoying.
Oh,
He
shocking, Ryan.
Yeah, I
Shocking.
know. He then moves his sights to Peter Thiel, and the two of them really do seem to sort of lock in together. There's numerous allusions to Peter Thiel visiting his ranch in New Mexico. They talk about, like I said, Brexit, this idea that, like, the carnage of destabilizing democracy will allow them to invest. And he also seems to kind of like learn how. It's funny. I don't think, based on what I can see, I don't think Epstein was this grand ideologue. I think he was a prolific sex trafficker and pedophile who was racist. But as he's working with Silicon Valley, he's starting to learn to speak the language of the populist far right, the dark enlightenment neo-reactionary people. He's using it as a sales tactic. And he's telling them, I'll help you build your ethno state if you basically allow me to keep running my sex trafficking ring. Like there's lots of conversations like that buried in there. And so, yeah, I think you're right. He's whispering in everyone's ear, but he's doing it like purely to just continue running his sex trafficking and influence operation.
And Peter Thiel, for those who don't know, actually is a white nationalist. He has funded white nationalists, a gay white nationalist Silicon Valley entrepreneur who has literally groomed JD Vance's entire life and career, hand delivered JD Vance to the White House, and a person who's part of the South African PayPal broligarchy, along with David Sachs, who is the, wait for it, czar of AI in the, wait for it, Trump administration,
Yeah.
and Elon Musk, who was, wait for it, the biggest donor to Donald Trump, $300 million, and also the head of Doge. So it's so incestuous and connected. But I do think, what you're talking about is with crypto, I think it's so important. What people fail to realize is crypto really thrived on the dark web, Silk Road, right? The founder of Silk Road went to jail, was convicted, by the way, pardoned by Donald Trump.
Hold on.
And on Silk Road, they did use crypto for sex trafficking, uh, pedophilia, assassinations, drug trafficking, weapons trafficking. So if I'm Jeffrey Epstein and I want to create an opaque trail where nobody could like see how I'm, moving around money and like moving around girls, crypto's it. Like that's awesome. It's off the grid.
Yeah, it's funny. He has like a bunch of emails where he's complaining about Bitcoin because Bitcoin is like the Bitcoin ledger, you can't edit it. So it's actually very traceable once like money goes into the Bitcoin ecosystem and it's extremely traceable once it comes out. So it's very hard. You basically have to use this thing called a tornado to sort of move your funds around to a million different wallets and then sort of aggregate them back out, right? And it's very time consuming and annoying. And so, like, Epstein is clearly frustrated with this. And so that has led to some conversations I'm seeing on like crypto Twitter, crypto X, about whether or not he built some kind of backdoor
Mm.
into Bitcoin. And I haven't found anything in the emails that sort of points to that, but I can say that he was like very aware of the limitations of Bitcoin for doing what he wanted to do and was trying to figure out how to fix it, how to change it. So make of that what you will.
And so, okay, here he is. He goes, okay, I want to continue raping. I want to continue, my sex trafficking. I want to continue amassing money. I want to continue being completely vague about how I make that money and how I hide that money. Ooh, crypto. Also, okay, these guys are really into far right globalism, nativism, tribalism. All right, let's use that to disrupt the world order. And then that takes me to Russia. Why was he so enamored with Russia, or why did he see Putin as a vehicle for him to accomplish these goals?
Yeah, I mean, I was not the biggest Epstein expert before this weekend. I had to sort of like learn about. I was trying to basically answer that question too, like what was he trying to do? Who was he working for? And I think the most charitable interpretation is that he gets his start at Bear Stearns. He's working for like very high profile clients.
Which even then, Ryan, is like so strange, to connect the dots for folks. Here is a man who hasn't graduated college, gets a plum job at one of the plum schools.
Yeah, he's teaching, right?
Yeah, run by Bill Barr's father, where there was complaints about him. Then by just luckily gets plucked for his genius and
Right.
without any experience joins up at Bear Stearns, where again other employees are like, "Yo, this guy's lying," and slap on the wrist, and
Right.
then just keeps failing up, failing up, failing up. I didn't mean to interrupt you, but
No, no, no. You're
oh,
totally right. He he fails up, but even in his emails, he sort of treats himself still as a financial advisor. That's what he's offering all of his clients and his network, and he's sort of giving them tips and sending links around. And whether that was real or not, that seems to be how he's presenting himself through this period of time. He's obviously working, in that sort of lawless international gray space that exists between, post-Soviet Russia and, Israel and the UK. And, you're seeing all sorts of allegations about MI6 and Mossad and, and FSB activity. Sure. Let's just assume like Ghislaine Maxwell's dad, he's a triple or quadruple agent. By the time he's using email, at least to communicate in the late 2000s, early 2010s, he is creating this new phase of his life that you can actually read in real time. It's fascinating. He's trying to learn as much as he can about technology, and he's trying to then take what he's learning and selling it to very old billionaires. I think Dropsite News has that excellent audio clip
volunteer.
between it's Ud Barak, the former prime minister of Israel, and to me that clip, yeah, obviously it's like
He's like, "Heel, huh? How
right.
do you spell it? Palantir?"
It's mind blowing that, this is literally where Israel discovers Palantir. But for me, I found it very instructive of like, oh, that's what Epstein is doing. He's talking to like elderly old men about stuff on the internet that he's learning about in real time. And he's saying, like, he has that line where he's like, that this is the new old money. Like
Mm.
Silicon Valley is the new old money. Like that's what he was doing. And pedophilia was part of it. In fact, you could probably argue that his failing upward isn't so much failing upward as like connecting with other powerful pedophiles who like have a vested interest in his career. Like there's an argument to be made there. But yeah, I didn't get the I don't know. I haven't I had should say I have not read the entire archive. That's like a life's work
How
probably.
dare you?
I know, but from what I have read about his like adventures in statecraft, they seem to be largely fixated on making money and building out his sex trafficking ring. And then he gets grand designs later about like eugenics and super babies and trying to create teleportation. And he has this whole idea of like genetically engineering a kosher pig. Like just wacky supervillain shit. And that
No,
starts
but
to
it's I mean, that okay, so let's go to the racism part of it. Don't worry, folks, there's a lot. We'll go section by section. The racism part of it, I think, is key because the racism part of it also drives Steve Bannon, also drives Stephen Miller, also drives increasingly Elon Musk, Andreessen Horowitz, and specifically Peter Thiel. And if you look at the technocracy, the technocrats, the oligarchy, we've done several shows on it. I'm going to do about 2 more this weekend on it. The stuff that you just said right now, people are like, that's crazy. But this is what they openly believe. They follow these whack guys like Curtis Yarvin who talk about like, basically turning people who are not useful into Soylent Green. And they're talking about the end of democracy. And they're like, democracy is not compatible with capitalism. And they're talking about like, free cities in Greenland. And they're talking about like their technocratic feudal system. And then they're talking about like transhumanism and living forever. And like, I'm not making this up, folks. This is what like Elon Musk, Peter Thiel, and all these guys believe in. And then they're also very pro eugenics. And you saw that with Dr. Oz, you saw that with RFK, you saw that with Peter Thiel, Elon Musk, right? We have to create the super race through our seed, which we will then, the future of humanity will thrive on Mars. It's really integrated. Talk to us about the racism and eugenics part of Epstein that shine through this latest dump.
Yeah, I mean, he is unequivocally racist, and he is very interested in creating like he seems okay. So I would my feeling is that he is like trying to find ways to into he's trying to find ways to intellectualize his pedophilia. Like,
Got it.
I sort of think that he is like based on the fact that there are complaints about him being abusive and predatory at his very first job at that school that he was not qualified to be teaching at, makes me think that like he is not a spy that was using pedophilia. He was a pedophile who got brought into the world of espionage.
Interesting.
That's my take. And so obviously at a certain level, you're going to have to intellectualize what you're doing and why you're doing it. And so all of the eugenics and race science and his idea of creating like a stable where he's like breeding women and doing like, CIA kind of like mind control stuff on them and all this, that to me feels very like, what if a pedophile had a midlife crisis? Like right? Like I also think based on his emails, he was very, very, very fixated on climate change and societal collapse. And instead of preventing climate change or
Yeah,
societal
none of them want
collapse,
to prevent it. None of them
no,
want to save us.
he
Yeah,
wanted to cash in on it.
there you
He
go.
wanted and he wanted to have basically a monopoly over young women and young girls to create like an arc for climate change. And this is not me sort of making this up. This is like what he's describing in his emails. This is what he sees himself as someone who's creating the future.
And many of these individuals, folks, and the reason why they're psychopaths, and I hope this dump, what I mean, I know it's a strange request, but I hope it increases rage against the billionaires because I think more and more people realize who's been running the system, who's exploiting us, their end game. It should inspire a type of rage where it has like a legal Bastille Day. I said legal, a legal Bastille Day, right? Because these people are all up in the Trump White House. Trump, folks, and his family have made $5 billion through crypto, World Liberty Financial. And what we found out is that, first of all, he's pardoned CZ, the Binance man who used crypto for, wait for it, money laundering.
Yeah,
You just saw over the weekend the spy sheikh, known as the national security advisor of UAE, the brother of the prince, invested $500 million into World Liberty Financial, and then surprise, surprise, Ryan, a couple of months later, UAE got the super advanced AI chips. Right?
of
It's like
course.
it's a big cabal, and it goes back to these foreign countries. America's for sale, the president's for sale, and he's also, in my opinion, not just for sale, but thoroughly compromised. And this is where you go back to Russia, right? And so much of this goes back to Russia, Russia, Russia. And someone just sent me this article. LC sent it to me, and it has I read this yesterday. Thank you, LC. It has a comment from David, and I know you wrote about this as well. Quote, the truth is that Epstein was continuing to overthrow the Western financial system with Bannon, long a Russian goal. He was working with the FSB connected people. He helped seed and steer Bitcoin and Tether. He even planted the seeds for QAnon with 4chan and Poll. He didn't count on Israel to do this. He worked with people connected to Moscow. Your response, Ryan?
So I can definitely talk about the 4chan
Please.
piece of this because I think it is being a little overstated based on what we can see. So what we can say is that in 2011, um, a former advisor to Bill Gates sent Epstein an email basically being like, "You got to check this kid out," and it was a Wikipedia article to Christopher Moot, the head of the founder of 4chan. By that point, 4chan had been around for almost 10 years. And
Can you tell people what 4chan is for those who
sure,
don't
it's
know?
an anonymous message board that is sort of like the home base for the international far right. It's the home of Gamergate. It's the home of QAnon. It's the bad corner of the internet, basically. And there's been this mystery around 4chan for years of like, why did the political section of the message board come back? POL, poll, politically incorrect. It was banned twice. Versions of it were banned twice. And then Christopher Poole just reversed course a year later and brought it back. And then that's where you get QAnon and Gamergate and all the rest. What we can say is that the day before it came back, he met with Epstein in person. Epstein talks about how he drove him home. What is really funny though, because Christopher Poole is kind of a notorious flake and a notorious like person to deal with. What happens after Epstein meets him are 3 to 4 months of like almost 100 emails trying to meet him again. And Christopher Poole flakes like constantly to the point where they're like almost yelling at him in the emails. So I can't say for sure that 4chan was some kind of like Epstein op and that he was running the whole place. But I can say that the worst part of that site came online after Poole met with Epstein and that Epstein was using 4chan. We know that he sent a 4chan link to his girlfriend at the time in 2017. It was a clip of Five Nights at Freddy's pornography, the video game Five Nights at Freddy's. So we know that he was looking at 4chan. We know that he was reading about Gamergate. I found articles about Gamergate in his inbox that he was reading. So he was very aware of that world, but I can't say for sure, how much of a thumb he had on the scale.
And you write this: were Epstein and Bannon really building a crypto-funded far-right coalition of pro-Russian dictators across Europe, or were they just LARPing as kingmakers with each other over email? And does the distinction even matter if other powerful figures seem to believe in their project? Where do you land on it now?
I think there's definitely a bit of them playing like Risk with each other. Like they're talking about like, oh, I've got this person in my pocket. I got that person in my pocket. And like Bannon is a notorious shit artist. Like he's just like he just the man can't like, stop taking credit for stuff that just happens. Do I think that Jeffrey Epstein manipulated elections around the world and convinced all of us to vote for Donald Trump almost 3 times? No. In fact, the Trump angle of this, I think, is the most interesting because based on the timeline that we can kind of put together from the conversations with Bannon, it my read on it is a man from Epstein world becomes president of America, and Epstein world freaks the fuck out and spends the next decade almost trying to figure out what to do with that. And so Bannon is basically going around Europe selling, his influence, which his influence is actually Epstein's influence, and claiming that I can get Marine Le Pen elected in France. He didn't. I can get the Nigel Farage elected in the UK. They didn't, and in fact, Brexit predates Trump. So it's like there's a bit of both happening. I think that I don't
I think
think
they nudge. I see them as nudgers.
yes,
They nudge us towards self-destruction. They seed.
and they profit off the self-destruction
Yes,
for
it's
sure.
almost like what Russia does, right? And what other foreign countries, they're like, "Oh, racism is a problem in America." Okay, let's exploit this already existing divide. Oh, religion and Islamophobia is a problem. Fantastic. Let's
Right.
exploit. Oh, transphobia. Let's just nudge. Let's just nudge it a bit. And this is where I feel like 4chan and the internet has been so critical to the destruction of democracy and truth. Because let's be honest about it, it's really remarkable, right? I was thinking about this, that the last decade, right? 4chan, for those who don't know, like I said, it's like as Ryan was saying, this is this hub of the internet, which is literally the birthplace of everything toxic, vile, Nazi, misogynist, racist, right? One of the things that at birth was QAnon. QAnon is a conspiracy theory, folks, that literally, I just want to remind y'all, was on the fringe of the internet's 4chan. And then the right wing and literally the Trump administration said, we can actually use this to divide Americans. And what's so fascinating, Ryan, is they radicalized their own base over the past 10 years, convincing them that there's a cabal of global pedophiles who are also devil worshippers who are raping children, and they're all leftist and enemies of Donald Trump. Even gets better. And the only person, Ryan, who can take out the swamp and be like you'd use Excalibur and destroy this cabal is Donald Trump. And once Donald Trump gets elected to office in 2024, the Rosetta Stone that will prove it is the Epstein Files. And now we see it was a complete it was like projection. I mean, I know we don't know, like we don't know what's in their minds, but to me it seems like this operation where, oh, this is actually us. Let's seed it and make it about them.
So, yeah, you're onto something really important. and I've seen people kind of take this maybe a little too far and say like Epstein was Q, which we know is not true. It was Ron Watkins and his son, sort of these kind of shadowy guys who latched onto a thing that was already because before QAnon it was Pizzagate. There were a bunch of different attempts at QAnon. There was like an FBI themed one too. Like 4chan is very much like monkeys with typewriters. They're just like experimenting all day, right? But but if you go and you look at sort of like what Epstein was trying to do with reputation management on the internet, we know that he was spending like thousands of dollars a month to hijack Google search results for his name. He was having people mess with Wikipedia editors that were trying to put his page in the sex offender category. He was like very aware that his name after his conviction in 2008 was associated with pedophilia and sexual predatory behavior. So it is not totally crazy to me to imagine a situation where he decides, well, let's make any accusations about me seem so far fetched and pay a bunch of people to just like spin them up on 4chan. Now, obviously, he can't control what goes viral and what doesn't to exactly, but it wouldn't totally surprise me. It wouldn't totally surprise.
And also, you see a tactic of fascists. It's you just spin it and you accuse
Right.
others of what you're doing. And also with Donald Trump, just a perpetual bullshit artist and projectionist. But there is something, Ryan, and this is just, after reading all this and all these people knew. See, this is what's fascinating. I'm just curious because you spend so much time with the documents. Wouldn't they like? Are they just shameless? Are they arrogant? Are they sloppy? How could you sit there like Elon Musk, for example, or Peter Thiel and say, "Oh my God, look at these perverts, look at these dams, look at these liberals raping kids, look at these roving gangs of Muslims and Pakistanis in England." Go at That's what Elon Musk did, like
Yeah.
literally whipped up hate against Muslims and Pakistanis for the past year on Twitter. Meanwhile, you're part of that entire pedophile ring. And eventually this shit's gonna come out because there's an email trail. Like, did they think I'm just very curious what you thought. Like, they thought they would get away with it. They thought it would be buried. They thought maybe if they lied enough, they thought if they muddied the waters. What did you think?
I mean, I don't think they see us as human beings. Like I don't this network of very powerful men, like they don't care about any of us. Like they're so interested in impressing each other and they're so sort of stuck in the you can almost sort of see the like social pull of the Epstein network of like want like talk about Elon Musk. The man is begging to go to an Epstein party on Christmas morning in 2012. These guys were all trying to impress each other, impress Epstein. They were constantly channeling and wheeling and dealing and talking like little boys, trying to get to the poker game kind of thing. But we're talking about like the most horrific sex crimes that have ever been recorded,
And they didn't care.
and they don't care. And then when you get to the statecraft era in the mid 2010s, they see. I mean, I think it's Noam Chomsky in one of the emails describes um the allegations against Epstein as like being spread by vultures that he should just ignore because it's meaningless. So it's like these guys see us as riffraff, and it's only when the New York Times finally goes after Weinstein and successfully takes him down that they freak out and they start, and then they decide, well, let's destroy the planet. That's what's so horrifying to me, and why I've had honestly trouble sleeping the last couple of days is because these guys decided that it would be easier to destroy the entire post Cold War establishment than have an article written about them in the New York Times. Like that's existentially horrifying to me.
I'm not surprised. And the analogy that I've given often, and I'm not the only one, and you see it time and time again throughout US history, especially when it comes to white supremacy and capitalism, which are merged together,
Yeah.
is if given a choice between equality, expansion, and sharing the mansion with the rest of us or burning down the mansion, they have always chosen to burn down the village. They would rather drain the pool. They would rather engage in civil war. They would rather literally, as you have said and we have seen, engage in the type of shock doctrine where they will destroy the financial systems of the world just so they can make money. They have the means and resources to try to combat climate change. They don't care, Ryan. They're like, Earth is over. Let's just get out and go to Mars and live forever. AI will make us money and also will give us our private military firm to protect ourselves. Who cares if it like just completely obliterates like, half of humanity, right?
Yeah.
Eh, Curtis Yarvin, he's genius. He said that those people who are not useful, they should be turned into like a type of Soylent Green, and we should use their energy. And another thing that Curtis Yarvin, who by the way is the philosopher king, just complete moron, that is followed by Peter Thiel and also JD Vance, the vice president, follows him. He says those people who are not useful in it, you can define uselessness.
Right.
We'll put virtual reality helmets on them, and we'll just put them in a warehouse, and they could just live in a virtual reality simulation. And then democracy is incompatible with capitalism, and you all, God has chosen you to be the best members, the best leaders of humanity because you're so rich, and so you guys get to decide then a puppet leader, and then you will have a global fiefdom, a technocracy. I'm not making this up, folks. That's your end game. And so Jeffrey Epstein is part and parcel of it, completely, if you will, cheering on and or helping with his network bring down the post World War II order and the financial system just so he can continue his pedophile ring. And he's
Yes.
found certain individuals who want to do it for, you know, new world order, more money,
Right.
power. And I do think I really want to stress this because we've said it twice before. Me Too, Me Too was the one that just, oh my,
It scared the shit out of them. And you're right, like, he is in different emails to different people, dressing up what he's doing in a different way. Like, he is talking about, global order to one guy and eugenics to another guy, and I am having a bunga bunga party to a third guy. Like, he knows how to sort of target the people that he's working with. And at the heart of it, all of it was just enriching himself and continuing to be a prolific sex predator.
and not only that, the fact that so many people in power, part of this cabal, part of the system, the elite, the 1%, they knew, right? Like there's more and more stuff coming out every day, folks, about people who like Peter Attia, the doctor who was hired. My God,
Oh, yeah.
Elon Musk, like a lot, like Sarah, that the former was she the former wife of Andrew, Fergie?
I think you're right. Well,
Yeah,
there's a whole yeah, we haven't even talked about the UK royal family part of it where, like, there's some stuff in there that seems to, like, imply that, like, the entire kind of, like, media blitz against Meghan Markle was, like, tied to Epstein. Like, they're to distract from Prince Andrew allegations. Like, not even because they particularly cared about Meghan Markle. Like, they are and we've also only talked about the political side of this, but he is talking to some extremely powerful publicists and PR people because he is trying like, he is a linchpin. Like, basically, if
it wasn't his publicist. We just found out the name of the publicist, who's like this Russian American woman.
are you talking about Spiegel?
No, no. Well, Spiegel's another one. Continue, continue. I'll find the name.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Basically, like, in all these emails, there's usually someone coming to him with a problem, and then he uses his network to solve it. And that is like it's almost like he's the server that power is moving through, and that server is powered by pedophilia and cryptocurrency. Like, that's what he's doing. He's the intermediary, he's the fixer. And then when he has problems, he can turn that network back around and say, we want to crush that, we want to crush this. So I don't know. I'd ask you, like, do you think that there is someone above him? Because, like, my mind just sort of goes to, like, there is no one in charge of this. It's just all very selfish people, like, working towards sometimes similar goals. But
I'll answer this, but let me just give you some more example. I mean, what I was talking about, because there's so much, folks. Pardon me, like me and Ryan, we're trying our best. There's so every time, every day, the more than 3 million. This is from the Guardian. The more than 3 million Epstein documents released by the U.S. Department of Justice include emails from accounts labeled "The Duke" and "The Invisible Man," as well as from Sarah and references to Fergie, suggesting they are from former Prince Andrew and his ex-wife Sarah Ferguson. Gets worse. They appear to reveal the two were in contact with Epstein immediately after the end of his house arrest in August 2010 and Mountbatten Windsor's visit to the U.S. that December. Again, folks, Epstein pled guilty in 2008 to soliciting a minor for prostitution, for which he served 13 minutes in jail. He was out 6 out of 7 days a week. And just remarkable. Prince Andrew then was the first person, well, was the most notable person identified by Virginia Giuffre. who, by the way, I just want to connect the dots, was first and foremost an employee at Mar-a-Lago, where her
Yeah.
father worked. She was at the spa reading a book. Ghislaine Maxwell approached her and said, "Oh, you want a career in massage and masseuse? I know someone." And then Virginia Giuffre said that she was passed around like a platter of fruit by Epstein to his friends. Some of those friends were Prince Andrew. She was the first one to name him. For the past decade, going back to what Ryan said, there was a smear campaign, apparently against, well, definitely against Virginia Giuffre. And Virginia Giuffre allegedly killed herself via suicide a few months ago, a week before her book was released. Prince Andrew, Ryan, is no longer Prince. He's
Right.
just Andrew. But there was a decade. I just want people to know there was a decade of smearing, and the whole royal family tried their best to protect Prince Andrew. It seems that Virginia was telling the truth, because if she wasn't, Andrew would be Prince Andrew, Ryan. And
Yes.
she also mentioned a prime minister of a foreign country. Some people say, not me, that could be Ehud Barak, and his name shows up a lot in the latest files, right? And also other billionaires that she said she described them but didn't name them. And then you also look at this weekend, right? Because I think look at how it just connects. Like Epstein's the Rosetta Stone. This weekend, Ryan, the Melania doc was released. Melania
Yes.
doc.
Yes.
$40 million. Amazon spent it to curry favor with Donald Trump. 30 plus more $1 million for publicity. Can you tell everyone, of all the people they chose to direct Melania the documentary, who they chose and why this is important?
Yeah, it's, Epstein's personal friend, Brett Ratner. So, yeah, it is literally this is why I feel like a crazy person because, like, it is literally all connected. It is there all of these guys are still working together and still talking to each other. I mean, there's an email in the most recent dump that seems to imply that Epstein knew that Kavanaugh was gonna become a Supreme Court justice 3 hours before the media did, before everyone else did.
How?
How? Like, if the timestamps, I mean, the timestamps seem to be real, so I'm not really sure how that happens.
And also check this out. Gosh, there's just so much coming out. Um, Speaking about women, the misogyny and the racism. Here's another email. Jeffrey Epstein from John Brockman to Jeffrey Epstein. Subject regarding Peter Thiel. I'm on the case regarding Thiel. Let's talk tomorrow. I'm at the farm. But why Thiel, another libertarian type, and not Elon Musk, a truly brilliant physicist
Oh, yeah, this
who you would benefit from knowing? Peter Thiel professes that he's unable to engage in what he terms unacceptable compromise politics, considers democracy a failed experiment, drawing into doubt the wisdom of granting women and the poor voting rights.
yes.
Uh, I mean, so it seems that uh, that was, folks, how Peter Thiel was introduced to Epstein. That was the first time that someone is mentioning Peter Thiel, and it's kind of casually implied that Peter Thiel does not think granting women the poor voting rights is smart. And Epstein said, "Oh, I'll meet him."
Yeah, I wanted to pull up I had found the first direct email between Thiel and Epstein, I think, which was a yes. So, uh no, okay, so they started emailing back and forth in 2014, and this you'll find this interesting. In 2015, um, Epstein connects Thiel with Sergei Belikov, who is Russia's, at the time, deputy minister of economic development and an alleged Russian FSB member. So if you're sort of wondering, I mean, also 2015 is sort of a crucial moment because I think for the last decade we've all kind of said, all right, well, Silicon Valley kind of aligned with Russia's interests, during Brexit and then the U.S. Trump administration's first campaign, and why? Well,
There you- and well, speaking of which, check this out. Epstein to Thiel in 2016. Guys, what's happening in 2015, 2016? There is a failed businessman, a apprentice reality TV star by the name of Donald Trump, who descends the not golden escalators, says some racist shit, and then assumes, unfortunately, the most powerful position in the world, the commander in chief, the president of the United States of America. Okay. Epstein to Thiel in 2016. Don't know how well you know Tom Barrack. He is great. Thiel. Who is that? Epstein. He will be speaker at the convention. He runs Colony Capital. Solid. Great real estate judgment. Donald's fundraiser. Tom Barrack currently serves as the United States ambassador to Turkey and special envoy for Syria, and he was senior advisor to Trump's 2016 campaign. We might as well just put on tin hats, man. Like, what's the
Well, yeah, no, I wanted to say because I saw this comment in your chat, which is like I'm trying to couch all of this, as best I can, because I think it is very easy to look at this and freak out like I am. And I'm trying to sort of always say, like, okay, this is what we have him saying. This is who we have him meeting at this date. Here's, and there's also, this is the crazy thing. This is one email, like address. This is his vacation address. There's more. Like these are some text messages and the emails from his vacation address. We don't have all the emails from this address, and we don't have the emails from the other addresses. So we haven't seen the whole picture, and yet even just the tip of the iceberg is genuinely horrifying. Like,
Yeah, and folks, and I know some people want. I read one comment and they're like, I don't know, man. Like, there one critical comment about you, Ryan, but everyone else really likes you. But like, because I think what you're doing is something smart, and it's something what I'm doing is I don't want to. There's so much here, Ryan, and we have to parse through so much, and inshallah we will with time because I think people will dig, dig, dig. But there's some people who say definitively, this is what it shows. This is what it means.
right.
We don't know all of that yet, right? So we don't know was he just throwing shit out, because that's what a lot of people do. Epstein seems to just throw a lot of shit out confidently.
He does. He definitely does.
And because he's Epstein and people used to worship him, same thing happened with Elon Musk. He has so much money, he must be brilliant. Not necessarily. He could just be saying some racist stuff because he's racist. He could be telling people what they want to hear, right? You get a picture though. You're getting a picture though. So I'm just saying we have to be a bit careful before we say definitively 100% this was what happened. We
And
just have to
also,
go
yeah,
ahead.
to your point, like if we decide right now, like, okay, like this, like Epstein was QAnon, let's just say that that might get in the way of us like understanding information down the line that points in a different direction. And so, like, as we're piecing this together, I'm sure you had this problem too. Like, journalistically, that this is not the whole thing, and you're still trying to like make sense of it. And so it's, yeah, this weekend was fascinating because I was like, okay, like I can clearly see these people meeting each other and talking and putting each other on the boards of each other's companies and going to parties, and it's like, what is what does it mean?
Yeah, yeah, it's because you were human beings are narrative creatures, storytelling creatures, and when we have a puzzle and the pieces are missing, our brain naturally, just through evolution, feels like we have to create a story to fill in the gaps. The problem for me, Ryan, is this is where conspiracies thrive because conspiracies give you a very logical narrative that fills in those gaps.
Exactly.
Our problem right now is we have more and more piece. We had a puzzle. We thought we got the pieces, but the pieces that we got now, when we look back at it, we go, oh my God, the puzzle's even much bigger. And we need to create more. We need to find a bit more. At the same time, when you look at a puzzle, you're like, okay, that's clearly a leg. Is that a nose or an ear?
Right.
I don't know. That's an eye. And I think what we can say definitively right now is, as Kira says, yep, Wad says, it's a big club and we ain't in it. This
Yeah.
is number one. It's a big club and you ain't in it. This is not just relegated to Epstein. This is not just relegated to Donald Trump. This is bigger. Furthermore, I think what we can say with confidence is these rich people, the elite, both here and abroad, and not just the elite, but also institutions, Ryan. And if you disagree with me after my spiel, you come on in. Or if you agree with me, they had no problem helping, funding, associating with a pedophile. Whether they were pedophiles themselves remains to be seen, but it's clear the pedophilia, the rape, the torture, the sex trafficking of girls, the price of doing business.
Everything that we have discussed in this conversation has took place after he was arrested the first time. So every one of these people, to his own admission, he had no inroads with Silicon Valley until 2010, 2011. He was out of jail the first time by that point. So everyone knew. Also, the man was a prolific racist and was talking about it all the time. So the only logical sort of assumption to make here is that the most powerful people on earth do not care about associating with a known pedophile who is also constantly saying racist shit at them.
Can you, before I was going to say what we know, can you, because we briefly talked about it, and I know there's now 2,000 people watching. his eugenics fantasy, Epstein's eugenics fantasy.
Yeah, so he found different ways to sort of intellectualize it, but he's talking about climate change and climate collapse and fascinated with creating designer babies. He didn't like IVF. He wanted to make the babies himself with his own DNA. He wanted to breed a new race of human beings. He I've seen people try to sort of make the argument like, okay, like is he a white supremacist? Is he a Zionist Jewish supremacist? You know what was the ideology there? And I go back to the same thing I keep saying, which is like, I think he was a pedophile that was trying to fit in with circles of people who were interested in science and technology and trying to find ways to launder that pedophilia. Um, but he did have this sort of side to him where he wanted to mess with the population and control people and create his own children. And he wrote about it at length in his emails to just casually.
And furthermore, I think what we know now, right, is if indeed his end goal was to satiate forever his pedophilia, right? Uh, and that was his main goal. Everything else was secondary to that. His interest in crypto, his interest, his money, his blackmailing. So I have goods on you, you have good on me, yada 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 yada. If I've always said this, Ryan, if I was a foreign intelligence officer and I knew that this man was a pedophile, but this man was a node to so many powerful people,
Exactly.
I don't care. If I'm American CIA, if I'm Mossad, if I'm Iran, if I'm India, Pakistan, especially Russia, I would do my best to infiltrate that circle and either make him or unwittingly make him an associate or, if you will, an
No
intelligence asset.
No question. In the sort of gray space of international spycraft, he is the most useful man you could he's a man who makes his entire business off compromising the other powerful people. Yeah, he's perfect for, espionage. I can't think of anyone more perfect.
Perfect, right? And going back, because I owed you all a name, and we were talking about Russia, and Russia's not the only country, but Russia's name, folks, in this Epstein dump, we talked about last night with Zev, thousands of times. Who else shows up thousands of times? Donald Trump.
Yes.
What other country shows up? Israel.
Yes.
Let's see if there's more countries. But who was the former prime minister of Israel who was buddies with Jeffrey Epstein? Ehud Barak.
Yes.
Who literally told Ehud Barak about Palantir and Peter Thiel? Epstein. We have the audio. Alex Karp, the head of Palantir, who openly bragged about helping Israel during its genocide. Openly, who's given billions of dollars of contract? Palantir. Who is the co-founder of Palantir and groomed JD Vance? Peter Thiel. Who's the vice president of Donald Trump? JD Vance. And check this out. I got the publicist for you. Masha Drokova was awarded together with her friends for service to Russia. She got that award at the age of 17. She joins Putin's youth movement as the movement speaker at 15. She walked with Putin, then was a owner of a UC IT investment fund. And guess what? Guess what? She was also Jeffrey Epstein's publicist.
The thing that should really unnerve you is not the idea that, Epstein was working 100% for Russia or 100% for Israel or 100% for the Trump administration or whatever. It's that these entities that we think of as having, different sort of sides of the chessboard had a shared vested interest in what he was doing.
There you go.
And I'm not speaking for the entire country, but I'm saying that he was very useful for a lot of different political spheres of influence who all wanted to break up the global order and were totally fine with working with a pedophile to do so. And that should really unnerve you, I would say.
And I just got to tell you this, folks. I saw it last night. Masha Drokova was tied into the Silicon Valley Bros, tied into the Palantir Teal network. They didn't do their due diligence. Was also very tied into, as we know, Putin. Here's a real email. I just want to share an email that she wrote to Epstein in 2017. I found a criteria to find smart people. The more Jew you are, the smarter you. You said you're 98% Jew. You're very smart. My ex boss is 78% Jew. He is super smart, less smart than you are. It's an exact email she wrote to Epstein. I have a close friend slash business partner who is 99.3% Jew. He is crazily smart. We take all Jewish people. Sourcing can be done through relatives. Ask them to do a 23andMe test. Do an event for everyone who's 98% Jew. Also, all of them are not religious. Do you think it makes sense, right? And she was tied to a lot of Silicon Valley folks and helped fund those people.
And I saw in your comments someone asked, like, why are there so many spies running around Silicon Valley? And I think it's the same reason that Epstein gets interested in it, which is in the 2010s, the early 2010s, these platforms like Facebook and Twitter start to become like real centers of power. And when you become a center of power, you start to attract people who want to use that power. And so I I I don't know, like if Silicon Valley naively thought that they would be sort of left alone, but by 2010 they are, the center of power, and countries want it, and Epstein wants it, and the clients that work for Epstein want it. So
And check this out. And check this out. This was also then, I mean, just let's just stick with Marsha Drokova, right? Who all up in Russia, close to Putin, then ends up working for Epstein in New York City, then ends up tied to this Palantir Silicon Valley bros. FBI confidential human source concluded that she, that she was in the United States, Ryan, to steal technology.
of
And there's a
course,
document there.
of course, there you go.
So I mean, look, folks, what we do know is Donald Trump was Epstein's closest friend, according to Jeffrey Epstein, with the audio that was released, recorded by Michael Wolff. Donald Trump partied with Epstein for nearly 10 years. Other people who gave money to Epstein include Leon Black, a billionaire who gave Epstein nearly $170 million. He also ended up partying with Trump in the 90s. Do you know where they partied, Ryan? Want to guess?
I'm gonna guess Mar-a-Lago.
Russia.
Oh, Russia. Sure.
Of
Okay.
course. And right now, I think what we're witnessing is the biggest cover up in modern political history, where Todd Blanche, who is the Deputy Attorney General, said on the weekend, we should not expect any more. So this is it, even though this is clearly not it. The victims' names were somehow released, but Donald Trump's face was blocked. Interesting. Some damning allegations against Donald Trump, both over the weekend and 5 weeks ago. The DOJ then redacted that damning testimony, again, alleging rape of girls, Donald Trump's
Yeah.
violent rape of girls. Uh, we know Donald Trump, we know Ghislaine Maxwell, for reasons nobody has explained, Ryan, is in a minimum security camp. Uh,
Possibly awaiting a pardon. Yep.
Possibly awaiting a pardon, and that transfer has never been given to anyone with her status before. We still don't know why, but we do know less than a week after she met Deputy Attorney General Todd Blanche, who was also Donald Trump's personal attorney, she got that transfer. So this is them slapping us in the face, lying to us. And Ryan, they've been lying to us for decades. And I think what really is chilling is, I want to read what that you ended it with, and I've linked to it, and I'll let you go. I know I kept you for a long time.
Oh, no.
Uh,
I was actually just double checking because wasn't Pam Bondi the one who helped get Epstein the sweetheart deal in Florida in the 2000s?
Acosta,
Acosta, I'm sorry, yeah.
and he ended up being Donald Trump's Secretary of Labor.
I was like, I know that there was one more in there. Yeah, yeah,
Yeah,
Acosta, yeah.
and then Howard Lutnick,
Howard
who
Lutnick, of
who
course,
is
yeah.
Secretary of Commerce right now as we speak, also lied about when he cut off ties with Epstein, and the latest data shows, 2012, he was perfectly fine bringing his entire family there. Uh, so we're just presenting the evidence, folks, and what you wrote is Epstein, possibly the most prolific sex trafficker in human history, spent the last decade of his life investing in technology that would help Russia. As you wrote in a 2013 email, quote, leapfrog the global community by reinventing the financial system of the 21st century. He was fascinated by websites like 4chan and technology like Bitcoin, and was personally invested in the success of far-right politicians in the US and Europe. He believed he was months away from ushering a new world order that would allow him to continue with his monstrous passion projects like creating a super race of children with his own DNA and building fascist nation states to manage overpopulation and climate collapse. As he wined and dined the world's most powerful men, none of whom seemed to have an issue with these ideas. He invited them to his island and his ranch and made sure they were surrounded by an endless supply of young girls. And I'm just not sure what we're supposed to do with that knowledge. Final word to you, Ryan.
Yeah, I'm still not sure what to do with that knowledge, other than scream into the void. But my hope is that right now, this attention that, we're clearly seeing on your stream, but across the internet right now, people are really locked into this in a way that I have not seen in a long time. I'm hoping that energy doesn't just dissipate, and I'm hoping that there's more pressure put on the DOJ to release more. I know the Democrats are trying. There's actually like a bipartisan committee trying to get this stuff out. I think we have to see it, no matter what it tells us about our world for the last 50 years and how uncomfortable, it makes us. I think we have to know. Seeing just the tip of it is so horrifying. I have to know. So
And I think all of us have to know. I think it's done. There's too many questions that need to be answered. And furthermore, uh, talking about how we can't escape it, Ryan. The president of the United States of America was the closest friend with the world's most notorious pedophile. And his wife, Melania Trump, partied with Epstein and Ghislaine Maxwell. And what we know from Michael Wolff is that Epstein is the one who introduced Melania to Donald Trump.
right.
It doesn't get more personal and closer to us than that, Ryan. Ryan, shamelessly promote yourself, sir.
Yeah, I used to be on Substack, but now I'm over at Beehive. You can read my work at garbageday.email, and you can listen to my podcast, Panic World, anywhere you listen to podcasts. And yeah, come check me out. And thank you for having me. This was about as fun as a conversation about this stuff could be. So
No, I mean it's disgusting, man. It's disgusting. It's gross. But thank you so much, Ryan, and everyone else. I have a 25% off special. I'm a terrible capitalist, Ryan. Everything is free on the left hook. If you have no money, no worries. Please subscribe. Also, go to Ryan's fantastic newsletter. It's the Garbage Day newsletter, and also the Panic World podcast. Once this is published on our Substack later tonight, I'm going to link to it, folks. Everything is free on the left hook, but we depend on the kindness of strangers. If you enjoyed this conversation, theleftook.substack.com/special. Only $3.75 a month, folks. Come on now. But if not, it's okay. Just subscribe. And I have Miles Taylor on. Miles Taylor, as you all know, was part of the Trump administration. He left. Donald Trump is trying to prosecute him for treason. And he helped create DHS, and he says DHS has to be deconstructed. And he's warning everyone now, folks, over what just happened. So much news. But in addition to Epstein, the news about Tulsi Gabbard, the FBI raid, the spy shake, our national security, and Donald Trump literally saying Republicans should be running state elections. He is trying to tell you, as a former DHS advisor and security analyst, Donald Trump is coming for our elections. So that's up in 1 minute. Join us. Thanks, Ryan, man. Come back anytime.
thank you. All right. Bye bye.